Hello, makers. Welcome to the Making Conversation podcast, where we chat all about making, the app and the act. I'm Jen, head of marketing for Making. My pronouns are she, her, and my Making app username is Knit Pearl. Now, today's guest is kind of why we're all here. The birth of the app came from this person's brain. We have things happening in the background at Making. We've kind of given a little bit of a tease on some of our social channels, but I wanted to sit down with Ashley today and talk about why Making is a thing, where it's going, and why you started all of this. So welcome, Ashley, to the podcast that you
Hello.
actually started 10 years ago.
I know. It's crazy. Next year will be 10 years, which is
It's
a
wild.
long time. First, I'm Ashley. Nice to be here again. We were talking before we started that I don't know if nervous is the right word, but I don't know. I feel like I've been living on a little bit of a cave or behind the scenes for Making this year. And so I don't know. We'll share a little bit of that. But I'm excited to not lead this episode. I think it'll be fun for Jen to kind of ask questions and for us to have a
Mhm.
conversation. I also think it's the first of many. I think, want to pull back the curtain a little bit on what it's like to build a startup. I don't even like that word anymore, to be honest. I think
Mhm.
pull back the curtain on what it's like to build a business as a woman in tech predominantly. But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So, for those who are listening or watching, and maybe they are new to the podcast, new to the Making app, and they have no idea who you are, do you want to give a brief overview and intro?
I'm Ashley, born and raised, and I have always lived on the West Coast, currently in Boise, Idaho, which is always a funny thing to say. People think it's in the middle of nowhere and there's just silos and potatoes, but that's not true. It's an actual city. I have 3 little boys, and I have been a maker my whole life, an artist, maker. I look at either synonymously, but making, I would say, started at the very beginning of my own creative journey. I have always been an entrepreneur. I don't know why I get embarrassed by this, but as a young kid was always creating businesses, like on the side of the sidewalk, in my parents' basement, at holiday get-togethers, whatever it was. Like, I was all about creating some sort of economic venture through things that I made or collected or whatever. At the very beginning, it started with this desire to create something and bring something into the world. And I think every artist and maker can relate to that. I think that the other part of that is this is an expression of who we are. And so making is an expression of who I am, who everyone who's worked on making is. And I found myself, as a child and through college and so on, always having my hands in some sort of artistic thing. And it wasn't until college, I went to college for sciences. I had planned to go to med school. And the quarter I was supposed to graduate went, what the fuck am I doing? This is not me. Like, this has never been me. I need to do something that speaks to who I am. And so, Ashley, being someone who never worries about sunk costs and always goes with her heart, dropped out of school that last quarter and pursued heavily a career in graphic design. And so that ended up leading me to a very, I can't think of a better word than like divinely guided, blessed journey through some really amazing opportunities. I ended up in tech. I had a design firm for a number of years and then just somehow found myself in tech. I think probably because I lived in Seattle. And so I ended up building a team for this company, a fairly large company, and built out their design team and user experience team. And that really was my first kind of venture into, okay, taking this idea of making far broader than just like these things that we make with our hands. And it's not a novel concept, like making things with computers and design has been around for time immemorial. But for me, it was like, okay, now I can apply my artistic mind and heart to whatever it is, this thing that I'm building, but also create a career out of it and make money from it. And so that led me on a very amazing career journey. And the short of it is, because it is actually, it's not a long story, but there's a lot of like curves in it. That led me to 2014. I was working in San Francisco and I was riding the bus. And God, I feel like I've shared the story so many times. I don't know if I've shared it on here, but riding the bus to Cupertino, and we weren't allowed to work on the bus. And so I took advantage of that and just like listened to podcasts, and I couldn't find any that resonated with me. I am a huge believer in storytelling. I think that everyone has a story to tell. Stories are the most powerful thing that we have. Um, and I think sometimes we forget the power that they hold and how they can make someone feel seen. They can make someone feel loved, and they can help someone feel empowered, not even just inspired. They can feel empowered to do whatever it is that they've been dreaming to do. And I couldn't find any podcasts like that were kind of in the creative sector. And so I decided to start one because I had so much free time. But I only had one kid at that time. So it was like I did have a lot of time. Um, and so I started the podcast in this tiny little 3 by 3 closet laundry room in our San Francisco studio apartment. It took off. It hit a nerve in the community that I was already a part of, but not like just a participant in. And my favorite thing about it was that it gave other people a platform. It wasn't me talking. I would share and interject here and there, but for me, it was all about giving people a place to share their story. And those conversations, honestly, may have been one of the most transformative things in my life. Like I had this opportunity to spend hours, it gets edited down, but hours getting to know someone and really talking about some of the deepest parts of our hearts and our journeys and connecting, community and life and our passion kind of all together. And at that time, I remember thinking, here I am working on apps and building apps for different companies and thinking like, well, the makers need something like this. But, in 2014, it felt too early. It felt like that just wasn't the time. And I had poked around, but also in my own life, I was like, yeah, I can't do that right now. Fast forward a couple years, and I met Carrie, and we joined forces, and we turned the podcast from Woeful into Making. We had a magazine that lived for 6 years, 7 years, 7 years.
Mhm.
It was an amazing expression and evolution from the podcast into kind of this print format that we very lovingly tended to for 7 years. And again, it was highlighting other people's work and journeys. And then I remember through this whole time thinking to myself, like, okay, when can I do this next thing? I'm always thinking about the next thing. And I like to go big. And so I was like, when am I going to build this app? What is it going to look like? What is it going to be? And over the years, several people that I knew in the industry were like, Ash, you should do this. And I just remember always feeling like it wasn't time. I think also mixed in there was like a certain level of like fear for sure. If anyone's ever been a part of a startup, like it's a lot of work and it's a huge endeavor and it takes a lot from you if you let it. It's still always going to take a lot from you. But I also think I had a certain level of trauma, like from startups. And Jen, you and I could do a whole separate, probably a couple episode podcasts on that.
Yeah. Well, I
But
mean, we're close,
yeah,
part of that could be trauma bonds
yeah,
from
it's true.
kind of
It's
having
true.
a similar situations happening while working in other startups that are not this one. We
Yeah,
bonded over that for sure.
totally. Frankly, 2020 hit and it was like we saw this massive surge in crafting and I think more recognition of it and
Mhm.
also these younger people like us getting into craft and people even younger than us and you know in our own kind of cornered siloed circles of the internet like we knew each other like we found each other but namely Instagram and things like that but it became very clear that there wasn't a place for makers. There wasn't like a singular place where you could go to connect with one another, to buy the things that you wanted to buy in the craft, to find the things that you're inspired by, you know, learn and explore essentially anything within, the maker sphere. And so that's really where this idea came out of was, this we can create this. We should create this. This doesn't exist. It still doesn't exist outside of making in the way that we're doing it with making. Because the other part of it is this is not just a product that or experience that we create for people. This is something that we want to be a part of that's different than other companies and we've been a part of.
Mhm.
And
So
so what
before you go
makes
any further, what is making right now in its current state? If somebody had no idea what it was, how would you explain it?
yeah, so I'll go back to 2020. So essentially in 2020 we were like, okay, now is the time to build this thing. And what is that thing? And I had spent a lot of time thinking about that, like what would this look like? What should it be? Should it just be an evolution of what kind of already exists out there? And it became very clear that there needed to be this kind of social community aspect paired with the ability to buy things to share and be inspired as well. And so what we started with was building out what we call the social kind of component or pillar of making.
Mhm,
And that is a social network. It's a place where you can connect um, and with other makers and explore all the things that they make and the projects that they catalog. And then the Making app is also a marketplace. And this has been released in phases. We'll get a little deeper into what those are. But what's been released thus far is a digital goods marketplace. So if you have patterns or ebooks or templates, different files for different types of craft, 3D printing, all that kind of stuff, you can sell those on the marketplace, which leads to the thing that we're going to talk about at some point
mhm.
what's coming next in the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about that. Making is an app, the very first social marketplace app for makers, crafters, and artists. And what makes it different than what is out there right now?
The only channels that we can sell through currently are marketplaces. They are horizontal marketplaces that aren't necessarily craft specific. Etsy used to be, it's not anymore. It's gone horizontal. And what
Mhm,
that means is it's no longer just handmade, it's many different things. And I call Etsy out because they're really the predominant leader in this space
mhm.
for makers and where they're selling.
Yeah.
But what's missing is this community and connection aspect. I have felt so seen on Instagram over the years connecting with community there. The problem there also is that it's horizontal and through the algorithm and through, just the emphasis on ads and all the different business model aspects, you don't have that level of discoverability that you did before. And
Mhm,
so just to break it down as like a business person or a seller, if you have a Shopify store or you have an Etsy store or you have some other platform that you use, you're having to drive all the traffic to that store organically. You might get like a little bit through like Etsy search and things like that, But you also have to have an Instagram and maybe a TikTok and maybe a YouTube channel where you're driving constant traffic to your store. When you're on Instagram, you can't, and it's, to be honest, Instagram is still relevant. It's less relevant. Like, it's so hard to be found there. It's so hard to
Mhm.
find, to be seen there.
Mhm.
But if you are selling things, or you are, updating people on like your products and your goods or your brand, you're having to move people from that experience to another place. And so the beauty of making is that you can share, and it's directly connected to your store within the app. And so, some might say, well, Instagram has like the shop feature. We won't get into the semantics of that. Try it, like, see how it works for you, like, see how great it works for you. Like, that's all I'll say. I'll leave it at that. And I think ultimately it's all about connection. I mean, we can talk about the specifics, like, we have this feed, which is similar to other social feeds, and you can post on it and you can link directly from your post to your product in the store. So if I post this sweater and you tap the yarn, you can tap it and find the yarn in the marketplace soon. If you want to make the pattern, you can tap the pattern that I posted, linked to this, and it goes to the store, and you can buy it all in this singular place.
Mhm. It's my favorite way to explain what the future vision of making is that is this beautiful community space where if you're scrolling on another platform and somebody posts a photo of a finished product and you're like, "I love that yarn. I love that pattern," or whatever part of that project is that you are connected to, you have to then go search, click, 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 look around for it. Whereas with making, it is literally click, 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 and it is coming to you, right? And it's or you receive the pattern immediately or whatever it is. But it's because of your love as a maker of the yarn brand, of the designer, that you are posting this, right? Like, of course, some people post in hopes that the designer will see it and repost them and get clout and blah, blah, blah. But typically, when we're posting things that we are making, we have this deep connection. We've spent hours with it. We have put all of our feelings, all of our energy into this piece, and we want to share it with our community while also showing the amazing art of the designer and the supply maker, right? The yarn or the fabric or whatever. And so it's this beautiful space of everybody lifting each other up in so many different ways. Not only somebody seeing what you made and commenting on it and liking it and such, but also somebody seeing it and possibly like finding a new yarn or finding a new, designer through what you've posted. And the other part that I will say is, you're talking about Instagram and how it's so hard to be found. Scrolling through the Making app, m so many people that I see there and interact with, I've never seen them on Instagram. You're not just getting shown the popular people or the people who are always being lifted up. You're getting a wide variety of people who are makers. It's a very different experience. And I think that that all connects back to our values and
Yeah.
why you wanted to build this in the first place, right?
Yeah. I think there's a few key things that kind of I'll revisit. And I've talked about these in past podcasts, but I think it's worth mentioning because these things have not changed. I think we should talk about change at some point, like whether it's this episode or another one. Like,
Mhm.
change is constant and you have to evolve and adapt to it. But there are a few things that are important. One is connection. Like,
Mhm.
the bedrock of making is connection. It has been from the podcast, connecting people to other people's stories. It was part of the magazine, and it's part of the Making app in like a very literal way. Connection, I could speak hours on, but as humans, we have this desire to belong. And oftentimes we find ourselves having belonging with people that have a common interest, or something that, we have a creative connection with them. And making is a really unique, not the brand, but the act is a really unique aspect of connection, of belonging, because you not only have this community that you kind of are a part of or plug into, but you're making something physical through this process of life. And every single thing that you make or create, it has embedded in it the energy of like that time in your life and those connections. I mean, like you can't see, but I'm literally surrounded in my studio right now with all these different paintings and things that I've made. And many times I look at them and it literally instantly brings me back to this period in my life, this memento, if you will. And so connection is key. It's important to not only have it, I think it's important to, when you can, create spaces for it. And so that is what Making's mission is creating this space for connection. On the flip side of that, it's about being seen. And so this leads into discoverability. Whenever you start a business, you start with a problem. Like, what is the problem? And when you create a pitch deck and you go pitch investors or whoever, like, you talk about the problem and you talk about the solution and how you're going to solve it. And there's the business aspect of it, like the business model and like how you prove out, your product market fit and all these things. But fundamentally, you start with the problem. And one of the key problems is discoverability. Like, people have a really hard time finding what they're looking for. And that can be because of many things. Um, Horrible search, horrible search algorithms, purposefully built algorithms that push down things that aren't popular and don't allow other things to rise to the top or be seen, priorities around making money and advertising as opposed to, just allowing people to find the things that they're looking for. On the flip side of that, it's also again about being seen. It's these things or these people or these products or whatever it is that you're having a hard time discovering, those things aren't being seen. Those people aren't being seen. And so in 2020, the murder of George Floyd happened, and a really critical conversation happened between me and the Making team. At the time, we were very, very small then, and we are now, but we'll get to that. We had this very critical conversation around a lot of the conversations that had been happening, in the maker space, and we had been a part of for, a year going on 2 years at that point. Like, if this is what we're seeing in our world, and then it's reverberating through these different industries, and we're hearing that people aren't being seen, like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, truly, what is this? Capitalism? Like, lack of intention? Like, ignorance? Like, what is going on here? And fundamentally, it's like, if you want to see change, you have to be part of it. You have to create it. And um I've said this before, maybe it's just that our team had the audacity to do that. And we're like, okay, we can do this. And while that's taken shape and form and, evolved over time, like, we still believe that we can do that. And that is creating a company differently. That's creating product differently. That's creating, and by product, I mean like how we build the algorithms, like how we create intention within the community. And these are things that are really hard to do. Like, the systems are not built to support this kind of aspect. But I believe it can be done. I believe that you can have a business that has integrity, but that also makes enough money to sustain people,
Mm-hmm.
and livelihoods, and builds a kick-ass competitive product.
When you came to me to work for Making and we had that conversation, I knew that this would be different for many reasons, but also because you had had this same situation or a similar situation with your past. And you had specifically said to me, I want to do things differently. And it can be done. It just needs to be done. And somebody needs to do it. And to me, that was like, okay, we can do this. We can be different. We can build a company based on these values of, people over profit on both sides, right? What we're building the product for and the people who are building the product. To me, that was very compelling.
I wouldn't change anything that I've been through. Like, it's been bizarre. Like, I've had a lot of really bizarre experiences in tech. Um, I don't think it's unique to tech. I think that we live in a society, in a world where there's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of broken systems. There's a lot of misaligned values. All of those experiences have led us to where we are today. They are the very reason that making exists, because you have a choice to take all the really beautiful parts of those experiences and combine them with your desire to create positive impact and move on and do better. And so that's one thing, because I think, today and then other episodes, we will share more. And some of it might seem like not dirt, but like some of them are shitty experiences, and we can share those and, still have this gratitude for those experiences and what they taught us, and also those companies. Like,
Mhm.
there was a lot of good that came with whatever bad. And so we'll work to focus on both of those. I think the other thing is that talk about kind of those initial conversations that you and I had. And I mentioned audacity. And I think you need that. You need a certain level of like brazenness and like naivety to be like, I can do this and I can do it different. But you have to realize that you are playing, you are going into a game that has been played very specific ways. And it took me a long time to truly grasp that. I follow my intuition and I follow my heart. And so I leap. And when I leap, I'm not looking at every single detail of how this may or may not work. I am just following my knowing that, like, this is the right step. Whether it's, yes, this is going to turn out to be some huge company and amazing and glorious and all these like things that designate success in the world, or if it looks different and it creates opportunity and it's smaller, but like also a success. So I don't look at all those things. I just say, you know what, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I do it. But the shadow side to that is that when you go through the experience, just like with any experience in life, you face reality. You face like what it really means to create and pave a very different path in a world that isn't meant to have different paths, or that it's not easy to pave them. And by easy, I mean like not even stretch of the imagination easy. And
Mhm.
so that is what we've signed up to do. And I want to mention that, and I won't go into this here. There's a lot of other good podcasts that go over this, and there's one in particular I'll share and you can put in the show notes. But
Cool.
tech companies, there's a reason that you have to have fast growth. And we talked about this in our last episode, I think. Fast growth is what you need when you want thousands, thousands, and thousands of millions of users to make money to get a 10x times plus return for investors. That is not a measure of success. It is a measure of success if you follow that model. And it's
Mhm.
something that, you have to do. And so that's why growth is pushed to the degree that it's pushed at all costs. But the costs are not just churn and burnout, but the costs are we lose sight of our values. And the costs are it's an imbalance because it's not meant to be balanced. It's meant to push towards one thing.
Mhm.
And I don't think that there's no judgment here of good or bad. It's just what path do you choose to go down? And for making, we were at a fork in the road of, are we going to go down this path now, or are we going to pivot and go down another path. And the end of last year, we were at that fork and we decided to move away from the venture route and go down the bootstrap route.
Mhm. Can
And
you, for those that are not familiar with such things, can
with those
you
terms,
yeah,
yeah.
what is the
Yeah.
venture capital?
Yeah. So I will give like the laziest person
Yeah, like a
explanation right now. I
one
think,
sentence, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the VC route in tech, it also is not just tech, but like consumer goods and things like that, is you create a concept for a product or a software or whatever it is. You go get funding from maybe first angel investors, which are like singular investors, but then you go into something called VC, which are venture capitalists, and they're investors who invest other people's money into companies. It's a form of investment, and these billionaires, millionaires who invest in these VC funds, the idea is that they will get a return.
Mhm,
And those often aren't going to come from every single company that the VC funds. They'll come from one or two unicorns over the course of 10 years. And so small startups all the way from, the very beginning to growth stage and beyond. So much larger companies like Uber and whatnot, they will go get funding from VCs and investment firms. There's different types of investing. We won't get into that, but there's an expectation that when you take funding, you're on a track and you will
mhm,
raise every so often and you will see growth and metrics, and it's growth at all costs. And many will say, well, some will say, well, not we're a little different, but like no, they're all the same.
mhm,
It's all about growth, it's all about return. Again, there's no judgment. Like that's the vehicle that it is. And
mhm,
we had a lot of conversations over a kind of 2-year period about what did we want to go the VC route? Did we want to go the bootstrap route? And in the beginning, I had really wanted to go bootstrap because we had a profitable company. We had this magazine. We were very successful, and we were like, we can do this. As you start to build software, it can get all overwhelming. And it was like, oh shit, there was this pressure for us, like now is the time. We need to build this, we need to do this. And so we did take some angel investment. And the plan was is that we would go down the VC route. And so we built our team and our product around that concept or that path. And really in 2022, we saw kind of the fallout of, the bottom fallout of the economy and affecting all investment and all tech and all business in a huge way, micro scale all the way to macro scale. And we're seeing it now, and it will be like that for quite a while. But what that means is you have to look at your business and you have to see where you're at and say, what am I going to do with this? Like, am I going to shut it down? Am I going to pivot? Am I going to try and sell? Am I going to buckle down and bootstrap, which is you self fund or you get like kind of smaller investments, but not from VCs,
mhm,
and create a profitable company? Like, there's lots of kind of different avenues. And it was interesting because, the end of last year, 2022, we turned down a round of funding, and I knew what that meant. I knew that it meant that we were going to have to lay off our whole team. And it was and remains like one of the hardest things that I have ever been a part of. Um,
mhm,
and I think the easiest way to explain it is that when you create a company, you never really know what it's going to turn out like. Like you kind of have this little seed of an idea, right? And you're in it, and it's magic. It's like pure magic. And you're just putting it out in the world to see if it's going to water it and shine it with sunlight and if it's going to grow. And making grew, and I grew with making. I was this deep, integral part, and there was lots of other people, and I'm just sharing my story.
Yeah.
I'm not singling myself out, but my identity became intrinsically intertwined with making. I had defined what success and failure was on many levels. And the end of last year, when we kind of came to this fork and we're like, okay, what are we going to do here? Are we going to go down this route and like, this is what it means? Or are we going to stop, pivot, and basically start over in many ways? We made that decision, and it was interesting. We made this decision as a team, like this was something that we were talking about for months prior. And then I went through a dark night of the soul. It was, I mean, that's the best way that I can describe it. The end of last year, it was like, okay, like what this means is that making, there is going to be a death and there is going to be a rebirth. And we sat with the question of like, do we just fold right now or do we continue or whatever? And it was the degree to which we all had this very strong conviction that like making wasn't meant to go away. Like it was resonant through every one of us that remained at making.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to stay and not know what that looked like. However, what I knew is that I needed to provide for my family. So like I needed
Yeah.
to go get a job and work. And this year, 2023, was that transition from, okay, this is what it means when you shift in your business and you're continuing to do it, but you don't know what it's going to look like yet and you can't make all the decisions. But then you start to peel back the layers and you start to look at like, okay, this is how I'm going to do things differently. And you actually don't see in front of you at all. Like you can't see in front of you. You also can't see what's going to happen with the economy or anything, but you have to trust your intuition. You have to
Mm-hmm.
know what's true to you. And you also, you know, are ultimately co-creating with the universe and you're letting go of control. And so, you know, I'm summing up all of 2023. Here we are in October, and holy shit, this year's almost over. But to sum up 2023, it was exploring several different paths. What does this look like if we do this? What does it look like if we do this? What does it look like? And what is the general direction that we want to go in?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we do that in a way that's sustainable to us as individuals, to the business? Like, is this going to sink, float? Like, what are we looking at here? And I think it had to go through that death and rebirth to be able to look at it with that level of honesty. I no longer have my identity intertwined in making. I love making. I want to see it to what it's supposed to be. And that's something that's constantly informing us as we kind of go down this path and, we find flow in certain ways. But what I do know is that I am meant to be here right now. And I am meant to help shepherd making through, just like you, just like David, just like Rosemary and Abby and Jason. So here we sit. Here we sit having made this huge change last year. We shut down our
Mm-hmm.
warehouse. We shut down the magazine. We pivoted the app team. What we did was we pivoted our funding strategy. And we are determined to bring this to light. And so this is what, when I said what it means to pave a new path and you have no idea what that's going to look like, that's what I'm talking about here. This is like not anything that I could have foreseen. Um, and to be honest, like really pushed back on like this whole year. It was like ripping myself out of making was like ripping my heart out. Many times I've had tears. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is too hard, But it's realizing that making absolutely has a place and it has a purpose. And I think that's the most important is it has a purpose. And that's what we have questioned many times is does making still have a purpose? And what is that purpose? And what is our purpose in making? And we're going to do it. Like we're going to finish shipping this marketplace and we're excited. It just looks different.
So, like, seeing you go from really leading making to taking a step back because you had to go make money for your family, which is complete. I think everybody listening understands this, right? To working through a lot of this stuff with me and David, primarily being the two people doing the stuff. Just to be very honest, I mean, when I say we're a small
Mhm.
but mighty team, I am not lying.
I mean, you guys
That
carried
is
it.
not just like
Yeah.
a phrase. As somebody who had been in a startup that moved probably too quickly to being somebody in technically what is a startup, and literally like the brakes were hit. I mean, there were months where we didn't have, updates or anything like that. And I mean, I don't think anybody is shocked to hear that if you've been in the making app this whole time,
Mhm.
because we just didn't have engineering power at the time. But
Mhm.
I always had this gut feeling. And one thing that I have learned in the 41 years of being on this earth is that everybody has an intuition. Everybody has that gut feeling, and if you can tap into that and listen, my head was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this?" The logical side of me, right? Because I mean, that's kind of what it's there for, is to question things. But my heart and my gut were like, yeah, this is important for many reasons.
Mhm.
And so we just kept on chugging. And then, there came a day where Ashley left that job and came back and said, let's do this. And we were able to find two amazing people to help us move it forward. I just feel like there is this rebirth, like you said. This is the rebirth.
Mhm.
It needed to go through changes. It needed for things to end and other things to begin. And we have Rosemary and we have Abby, who we met Abby at Flock Fiber Festival, and I absolutely love it. And we're going to have Abby on the podcast at a certain point. She's also a maker, but I still have that gut feeling. And I've told myself the moment that the gut feeling goes away is when I'm going to start questioning things. But this to me is something that is so important for many reasons. It's why I'm still here and why I'm so
I
excited
know.
about this.
I can't believe you're still here.
And
How many times have I
um,
said to you, "Are you sure? Are you sure?
yeah,
Are you really
I mean, a
sure?"
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that gut feeling, right? This is so
Mhm.
important for many reasons. It is important that we are a company that can show that you are able to be successful while also operating within a space of lifting people up and not tearing them down. We're not, I mean, we have to bend to certain things within capitalism because we're in a late stage capitalistic society and there is no way around it. But there are other things that we can be doing that are completely different, that are not, I mean, Etsy was built by a white dude that wanted to make money.
Yeah.
That's period, the end. And that's fine. That was his choice. That's what he wanted to do. But that is why so many people are unhappy with it, because that trickles down in many different ways. And, you know, this isn't a podcast for us to like talk shit about other brands, but this is a podcast to just say, like, we're doing it differently and we want all y'all to come join us because we need to prove, we meaning the community, that this can be done or nothing will ever change and
Mhm.
everything will live under capitalism and patriarchy and racism and all of the isms and all of the bullshit. But for people to step forward and say, we can do this, we need the community to also come with us and
Yeah,
to
we do.
show that it can be done. Together, we can prove that this is a thing that can happen within our society right now.
Yeah.
And that's why my gut was saying, don't go anywhere, Jen, because you can do something big within this. And especially within this amazing community of people who are so creative in so many different ways.
You touched on, and we've touched on a few times in this conversation, like women or non-binary or any kind of community or identity that is unseen in many ways.
Yeah.
Um, and varying levels and degrees. This is not to hate on anyone, including men. The point is that there's an imbalance. And that's what this is all about. This Yes, we had amazing opportunities, you and I. Like we've
Mhm.
had opportunities that many people don't have. Yes, we are privileged in so many ways.
Mhm.
What do you do with that privilege? Our job is to elevate others. Like that is the only purpose of that.
Mhm.
To take care of yourself and to elevate others. And the point about all that I wanted to make is just that we all need to work together. It doesn't need to swing in the whole opposite extreme. Like there needs to be more equity. There needs to be more balance. There needs to be more opportunity for women, for non binary, for trans people, for people of every color, for Black makers. There needs to be so much more space created where they can be seen and elevated.
Mhm.
And we are not going to solve that. We are not going it is such a massive and systemic issue, the being
Mhm.
seen part, the having equal opportunity or even just not even equal, just any opportunity. However, we can do our part and create impact in small but impactful ways. And if this is what our mission is this is what our intention is to create a very profitable company so that we can create more opportunity within making. So we can create a app and brand and company that is a true competitor to the ones that exist out there today. And we can do good with those opportunities. I don't know anyone who would say that's not possible. It just means that you have to play a different game.
Mhm.
And so we're creating, not creating, we're playing a different game. We don't know what the next move is. Kind of like labyrinth, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
but
Let's talk about like what's about to happen and where making is going. So right now making is a social marketplace app, and the marketplace is designers can sell their PDF patterns, or if you have an ebook, etc. You said this earlier, but there is a bigger realization of making that has yet to be shown to the world. And part of that is about a big part of it is about to happen. Let's talk about Marketplace
yeah,
2.0, what this is going to look like.
I'm just going to throw it out there. If there's any engineers listening to this that want to come be a part of what we're doing and create opportunity for themselves that looks different, like no one at making right now is making money. Like we're all working for equity. I will say that because I think that's
Mhm.
important to recognize that this is how much we believe in this. um, but if there's any engineers out there, front end, mobile, back end, whatever it is, DevOps,
Mhm.
all that, reach out. Like, we want to hear from you because we could use a couple more engineers to move this a little bit faster along. Making the vision was always what it's about to be. The vision was you have the social component that's very connected to the marketplace. The marketplace is a place where you can sell digital, physical goods. There's backend integration that can connect with, say, Shopify or other POSs. And then there's a myriad of other, features like your studio, which is what we call like where you log your projects and eventually your stash and all these other things. And so there's kind of these three parts, right? Like the social and marketplace are the primary emphasis of what making is. And for the marketplace, we built the bones. We built all the back end and infrastructure, and one person did that. Thank you, Jason. And we launched with just digital goods because we knew like adding physical goods was going to add like a whole other stream of potential bugs and other things that we needed to iron out first by just shipping a marketplace. So we did that. And so what we're about to ship is, and by ship, my mom asked me the other day because I said ship, and she's like, "What does that mean?" I was like,
Like a boat in the
putting
water?
out into the
What?
world, launching. Yeah, exactly. She's like, okay.
Yeah.
So ship, we are about to complete the vision of what the marketplace was always going to be, which is finished goods. Like you make something, you can sell it. You have
Mhm.
supplies, you can sell it. And not just knitting, not just sewing, like any craft, anything you can sell on making.
Mhm.
Now, anything that has to do with craft. We are craft agnostic, which means you can anything craft, any craft is welcome, but anything outside of craft, like drop ship goods, shit like that's not going to happen on making.
Mm-mm.
We are working on a Shopify integration as well, where if you have a Shopify store already and you want to integrate with making and use making as another sales channel, you can. That is what
Mhm.
we're planning to ship in the next few weeks.
So the other part of this that's really exciting is that if you're a designer and you have been waiting to join making because creating your store through the app feels tedious or it's just easier to wait for the web, that's also coming with this. So if you're a designer and you want to be on making and that's been the block, is that's changing too. So I feel like we're about to like open the floodgates for a lot of different things. And not only that, I also want to say that like we say making is for makers, crafters, and artists. That's because that is why we are building this, right? However, how many times have we been tagged on TikTok when people are making TikToks saying, "I went to Etsy to find a handmade gift for a friend, a relative, whatever, and I can't find anything handmade." This is also going to be for the people who are looking for that, right? So we're going to make it easy for these people to find you as well. This isn't going to be like just for makers, crafters, and artists. But the reason that we say that again is because you're the reason why we've built this. We are doing this for you. We are doing this for the community, and the community who appreciates the things will also be able to enjoy this whole platform to whatever extent they
Yeah.
like.
So, in the vein of transparency here, like again, launching this full marketplace is a proof point for us. Like, is
Mhm.
this possible? Can we sustain making? Like, can we create some level of profitability where making can fund itself? Do people want this? And so ultimately, that is a lot of our work. Like we have a lot of marketing pushes, we have a lot of channels that we haven't flexed in a long time, and some that we hadn't even used yet that we will. But we need help. We need people to rally behind us.
Mhm.
We Things have taken longer, yes, but sometimes the best things take the longest. You know.
Yeah, we're looking at you, everyone. No, I mean, I think it's the people who have said, "We understand why you're building this. We appreciate why you're building this." Now is gonna be the time to I mean, I kind of feel like we're doing, like, the NPR fundraising thing right now, but we're not asking for your money, we're just asking for you to join the
No,
app
we're
and
not.
be active. We're asking you to come to making and make money and join the marketplace,
However,
and
if you
yeah.
do have a lot of money and you wanna invest in making, you can.
You just wanna give it to us, and not tell
Yeah.
us that we need to completely destroy our values to run a successful company. Jen@makingco.com. Like you said, this is it. This is and it not that this is it as in we're gonna launch this and then just, like, jump ship. There are gonna be things that are added, and I do think that this is a really interesting time for people to join because, A, we're gonna be working on the user experience to, elevate it to what we want it to be, and again, we are not Meta, we are not an Instagram. There are technically 5.5 of us, 6 of us working on this product, 3 being engineers,
And not full
not
time.
working full time.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So, we're doing the best that we can. We're working on giving you a product that is beautiful in diversity and craft and human, people having opportunities that maybe they didn't have before. Now is the time to join. Build out your profile, start interacting with the community, get to know the app. Also because we want your feedback. If you have ideas that as a seller will help make your life easier, that will help you grow your community within the Making app, we want to hear that, right? We want to hear your ideas if you are just here to be a maker within the community and post your projects and, share what you're making, and you have ideas to help grow that community. We want to hear that. So right now is a really awesome time to join because you get to be a part of what we're doing. We're not up here just like, this is how it goes, not listening to anybody. Our ears are always open.
We should mention events,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of exciting
Yeah.
things happening at Making.
We are going to be a part of 2 events coming up. And I just want to remind everybody, we are definitely multi-craftual. The reason that we've been doing events focused on fiber arts is because those events have reached out to us. So if you are
Mhm.
running any sort of event and you would like for Making to be a part of that, I think the premise around the events that we are doing right now is a little twofold, right? Like, we are wanting to meet the community. We are wanting to create an experience at this event that's, you know, adding to why they're there. But also there's this side to, especially, being somebody who's in fiber arts, seeing all of these fiber festivals, and sometimes you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I have FOMO. I want to be there, but I can't because I can't afford it, or I can't get childcare, or I can't get off work, or I don't like being in crowds." Part of why Making is partnering with these events is to help bring a little bit of those events to you, to help share the stories of the vendors. Again, that storytelling aspect that you were talking about, that's so important. We're trying to bring that. And then eventually, possibly in the future, having vendors from an event create shops and like feed into one shop that would be like festival shop. And then people who are not able to attend are still able to learn about these vendors, purchase their product, all of that. So it's kind of this way of growing the community of these in-person events onto an online space. That is the goal
Yeah.
in the end. If you have an event coming up and you would like for Making to be a part of that, send us a note at hq@makingco.com. We will be in touch, but what we have going on in November, it's a lot, and I'm very excited. First of all, we will be at Sacred Sheep. There will be fun things happening in person there, and we will also be doing some vendor interviews as well as facilitating some interviews with people who are going to be attending that maybe just happen to have YouTube channels and are vloggers, and a few other things. We will continue to announce this as we get closer to the event, which is very soon. So stay tuned. And then we will also be at Barcelona Knits. Yes, Barcelona, that one, the one in Spain. And we will be most likely doing the podcast live from there. So you'll get to experience that. We will be doing vendor interviews. So if you're going to be at Barcelona Knits, please come say hi. I will be there. Our friend Val will be there. Lots of fun things coming down the pipeline. We just love telling stories. We love sharing. I mean, how many people at Flock that we interviewed had never been interviewed before? Like, a lot of them. And so to be able to share these people's stories, why they're so passionate about their art, like, that just, I love it. It's why we're here. So go into the Making app also, click on Discover, and scroll down to events, and you can see the videos there from Flock and enjoy like getting to know some vendors that maybe you've never heard of before.
It was really interesting being at Flock. We haven't really done many festivals, and I had not been a big part of Making for, like, the prior 6 months, like, definitely behind the scenes, but not, like, you know, doing all the things that I was normally doing. And just interviewing a lot of people there, it was an interesting experience for me kind of stepping back in. And I remember the first day, like, I was having a bit of a hard time because it's bittersweet in many ways for me. Like, again, it's kind of that releasing and letting go.
Mhm.
And you say this to me all the time. David says this to me all the time, but like, making matters, and I know that intrinsically, I know that. However, sometimes you're just too caught up in here, like, and you just all these different voices of like why you're doing things and should you be doing things and all that. This is back to storytelling. So the last day, it's like cleanup time. I think the doors are just about to close, and I'm walking by this booth, and I see David talking to this couple that have this booth called Fiber and Flame. I walk in, and this woman, and I can't remember her name. I feel really bad. I can't remember her name, but she starts to tell me that the reason that they have a farm, the reason that they're doing this thing is because of Woolful and a podcast episode that they had listened to. She starts to talk, and I immediately knew who she was. And it was this like very cosmic moment, because back in kind of the early days of the podcast, I got a lot of emails and people would just pour out their hearts and share their stories. And like, I couldn't reply to all of them because there's just so many, but I swear to God, that was what showed me not only how powerful stories are, but also just how amazing humanity is. Because these people took time to actually write out their story to someone they don't even know. like
Mhm.
it was incredible. And I remember this woman, like as she's talking, she's like, I wrote you one. And I was like, I know who you are. Like, I remember your story. And this is almost 10 years ago. And it was, and I'm paraphrasing and probably get some of the details wrong, but, she was riding the bus a lot, listening to the podcast, and her mom died. And she ended up deciding to leave the city and go buy a farm and kind of pursue this passion of hers. And to almost 10 years later be at a festival and walk down this aisle and kind of like go into this booth because I see David and need to ask him a question. And he's like, you got to come talk to her. And for her to tell me this, it was like this moment of just full circle, like where you realize like just the beauty of the things that you're doing. And it's not that you doing them, it's that you got to be a participant in their story,
Mhm.
and that you got to be a part of this beautiful thing. And they had this gorgeous booth, Fiber and Flame. They have their own flock and have their own yarn, but they also, her partner is a glass blower maker and makes all these gorgeous glass, knitting accessories like stitch markers and pins and things like that. And I can't quite describe the feeling. And it was like in that moment, that last day, I was like burnt out. I, was questioning so many things. And I'm like standing there and I'm like, what am I even questioning? Like, this is the power of storytelling, that it can change someone's life, that the connection that she got from the podcast, listening to someone else's story, empowered her and her partner to go start and make a new adventure. And like, that's what life is all about, is creating connection and just discovering new opportunities. What if we close out with a moment of gratitude?
Which is what we do on every podcast episode, so that's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so, this episode was a little bit different than our typical episodes, and we'll be doing more of this. Like, Ashley and I are gonna chat about, maybe a little bit more of the business side of stuff, talking about what we're building. What do you call it? Building in public. That's an actual term that
Mm-hmm.
business people use. So,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do a little bit more of that. And so, if there's ever any questions that you have, or if there's something that you're like, I want to know about this with making, like, feel free to send us an email, hq@makingco.com. And we will do our best to, respond via creating content with any question that you have.
Yeah.
But we're always going to end with a moment of gratitude on this podcast. So, Ashley, what are you grateful for?
I think it's apt to just share today in particular my gratitude for all the people that have been involved in this journey. Like, every single one, have played, not even, I mean, you can't even equate big or small roles, like roles that have had so much vitality in what we've done. And so I think for me, it's really just my heart is so full of gratitude for every single person that has touched making in some way over the last 8 years. And I am so full of like joy to be continuing to do this in some way. And I know that my journey is twisting and winding through making, but it's all of those people that have provided me the opportunity to be here right now.
There's like so many, I don't know, there's like so much going on through my head that I could be talking about. I feel like the thing that I say the most when we're talking about what we're grateful for is like the community and the people in the app and the people who believe in us. And I might as well just say it again because again, I wouldn't be here. This gut feeling wouldn't be here. And, we wouldn't be launching this marketplace and working on proving that you can build a platform with people in mind over profit if it weren't for the people who understand why we're doing this and who have been our cheerleaders this whole time. And so just so grateful for everybody who has continued to believe in us and to believe in what we're doing. Because it's really not about us. Like when I say us, it's like this idea of what we're building. So if you are a creative person at all, if you draw, if you paint, if you do woodworking, if you do glass art, if you knit, if you sew, if you crochet, if you embroider, anything picking up and creating something. If you are creative in any way, like come join the community. Sign up for an account, post your project updates. I think that that's also another thing that I absolutely love about making is like if I'm in the middle of making something and I'm like, "Oh, I want to share this." I don't have to worry about how many times I post so that the algorithm is happy. I don't have to worry about creating the most perfect photo. I just worry about, can you see what I'm doing? Is there light? Photo posted, done. It's like so refreshing. And everybody has picked up on that, right? Like, I mean, of course, people post beautiful photos, but I think that it's this idea of in the moment, I am sharing this thing that I am working on with this amazing community, and it kind of makes it feel like we're all doing it together. So I hope that you will all join us so that we can say things can be built differently within the society that we live in.
So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. To join the very first social marketplace app made for makers, crafters, and artists by makers, crafters, and artists, head to themakingapp.com. Download the app and join the amazing multi-craftual community. You won't regret it. Just so much inspiration and so many wonderful, wonderful humans. Did you know that you can also listen to the Making Conversation podcast in the Making app? Open the app, tap on Discover, and scroll down to podcasts. From there, you'll see all of them listed. We've also started putting these up on YouTube. If you're listening, there's a link down below to the episode on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, there is a link to listen. So choose your own adventure. If you've made it this far and you're interested in sponsoring Making Conversation or having Making at an event to collect content, amazing maker stories, vendor stories, etc., send us a note at hq@makingco.com. We would so very much appreciate it if you were to share the podcast with your crafting community, whether that's online or offline. Having more eyes and ears always feels real good. So thanks for watching and or listening, and we'll see you in the Making app.